The idea of Majurity Trust is just believing in the power of the collective. Sometimes something good happens when we come together instead of just doing things on our own. Social impact can often be lonely. So the ability for people to just rally together, journey together, both in giving, both in doing good, it's a much better way of doing it than just on our own.
The Giving Habit, brought to you in partnership with the Majurity Trust. Learn more about how they do philanthropy differently at majurity.sg.
Welcome to The Giving Habit, the podcast that uncovers the grit, hope and creativity of social impact. Through these discussions, we hope they serve as a reminder that anyone, anywhere can spark meaningful change. I'm delighted today to be joined by Martin Tan, CEO of the Majurity Trust. I'm going to leave it to Martin to explain a little bit more about what the Majurity Trust does in a moment. But full disclosure, I volunteer up to 2 days a week of my time working here. I work in the field of talent development and corporate affairs. So if I'm overly familiar with the subject, at least you know why, especially if I start referring to my guest as boss at any point in time. So, hello boss, how you doing?
Hello, Stephen.
Let's start maybe with a brief overview. Talk to me about the vision, mission and strategy of the Majurity Trust.
Well, actually what I like was your intro. Everyone can give anywhere?
Yeah, anyone.
Anytime, anywhere. I really like that actually. I think the idea of Majurity Trust is just believing in the power of the collective. Sometimes something good happens when we come together instead of just doing things on our own. Social impact can often be lonely. So the ability for people to just rally together, journey together, both in giving, both in doing good, it's a much better way of doing it than just on our own. So the idea of Majurity was the idea of just tapping on the power of the collective, where what if we could create a platform where donors can come together instead of a family office giving to one cause? What if 10 family offices come together? What if donors come together and actually chip in and pool funds together? Then instead of tackling a $50,000 problem, we can tackle a $5 million problem. So just the ability for us to go into a subject matter, a cause as deeply as we would like, with the right amount of resource, can I think create some meaningful and purposeful change. But the power of collective isn't just donors, right? It's really about grantee partners, or charities. We call them grantee partners at Majurity. And how do we bring them together? How do we make sure that they don't journey on their own? How do we make sure they're not alone? How do we make sure that they can come together? And then bridging these two together, we have the ability to say, hey, as a whole, as a platform, as a social impact ecosystem, what are the kind of problems we can actually tackle together? So I guess that's probably the idea of Majurity Trust is about, a philanthropic ecosystem that brings together donors and partners. And our goal is to build a thriving Singapore.
I love that idea. I love the idea about being able to unlock philanthropic capital on the one hand, to be able to then distribute that according to certain thematics, and then provide capacity building and support to those grantee partners as well along the way, so they can kind of stand on their own two feet. The Majurity Trust, it isn't a typo, it's a very conscious way of spelling the name. For those people that may not be familiar with Singlish, maybe you'd like to explain the logic behind the word majority.
It's to forever tell people we cannot spell. That happens to my daughter's name as well. So, contrary to popular belief, the national language of Singapore is not English. The national language of Singapore is actually Malay, Bahasa Malay. We were a Malayan settlement, and when we gained independence, the leaders were very, I think, wise on the onset to make sure that we enshrine that into our national identity. Our first language in English, that's our language of operation, of business, of commerce, of parliament, of education. So everyone speaks English. And because your audience is worldwide, Singaporeans do speak English. But because Malay is our national language, and we wanted a name that really keeps us rooted in the country that we are started and we are based in. So the Majurity Trust, we don't do anything outside of Singapore. We only purely focus on the issues in Singapore. There are talks about what we can do regionally, but we can cover that later. So because we are 100% Singapore and we want to really bring an attention and rally resources around it, we thought, why don't we build a name around our national language? So Maju, it means onward, to advance, to progress. It's Bahasa Malay. And our national anthem in Singapore is called Majulah Singapura, which means onward Singapore, advance Singapore, progress Singapore. And we figured, actually, why don't we use that? Because it's a pretty nice pun on the word. I learned recently that Majulah is not a word.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Majula, it's actually a colloquial term of Maju. So it's Majula.
Okay.
So, so in the English language, you will not find Majula. You will find, in the Malay dictionary, you will not find Majula. You'll find Maju. Right. So I kind of like that.
Yeah,
I think for us, it encapsulates who we are serving, who we want to be. So that's how Majority came about, using Maju as part of the name, and his, I think I've caught on.
It sticks and people understand it, right?
It's
very much grounding, as you say, in the Singapore context.
And anyone outside of this region will say we have terrible English and we can't spell. That fits into the narrative.
But we all know,
yes,
right? We
all
better.
know.
Very good.
If you know, you know.
And so Majority Trust does focus on Singapore. It focuses on Singaporean issues, and the tagline is, regardless of age or status in life, thrive.
Yeah.
It resonates with me. It's an incredibly inclusive statement. What does it mean to you?
When we first started, we were looking for a phrase that sort of encapsulated the vision. I think different companies, different organizations do vision and mission very, very differently. I want to be as simple as possible. So we landed on the word thrive. I kind of like the word. It's very different from success. To be successful, to be prosperous, words that resonates in the Singapore psyche. But sometimes thriving has nothing to do with wealth. Sometimes thriving has nothing to do with age. Thriving is something that we can do in a phrase that we use regardless of rank, status, or stage in life. Whether you're rich or you're poor, whether you're young or you're old, you can thrive wherever you are. Sometimes when we look at our friends from the bottom income, for example, sometimes we look and say that, you know what, they could do better. But what does better mean? Is it my reference point of what better is? Is it a wealthy individual's reference point of what better is? I know of very rich people who don't thrive. I know of very poor people who thrive. So what does thriving mean? What does it end up being for people in Singapore at all stratas of life? So instead of trying to help people be successful, and then we go into this notion, they must have certain wealth bracket, we must, bring them to a certain place. But what if thriving can be wherever they are? And that allows us to actually look at people for what they aspire for themselves, without someone from the outside or without someone from a different realities of life coming you to say, you should not be happy. But actually they are actually quite happy. So that for us is a really important word, thriving. Regardless of status or stage in life, you can thrive. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're young, whether you're old, we can all thrive at every stage of life. And that's sort of our hope. Now, how does that translate to the work? It could be as simple as a dignity of choice. Sometimes when we do food distribution, for example, because you're working with a low income, we distribute food based on what's available. But what if we give our low-income friends a choice? Instead of food distribution, what if we realize that as someone who's receiving financial assistance, if we provide them with a certain level of dignity by giving them choice, they can actually really eat the things that they like or have access to. Same thing with food distribution in supermarkets. So instead of giving a set pail of oil and Milo tins where many of them are diabetic in any ways and they can't use the food, why don't we give them choice? What if they have the ability to go to a supermarket and pick up food? So it doesn't mean that when we are poor, we should be deprived of choice. And that goes into this whole notion of what dignity looks like. And if we can have that, then again, regardless of status and stage in life, everyone can thrive.
I like that idea very much. I think the idea of providing solutions and saying, well, we know what success looks like, and so we've predetermined that. That's echoes of colonial thinking, right? Which I think is quite outdated now. I like the idea of, rather than providing, precipitating, so actually engaging communities and saying, well, what does it want? Or what is it that you think you're able to do to address these solutions? And how can we help precipitate those solutions? It's a far healthier relationship. It changes that power dynamic, frankly, in the philanthropic space, which I think the Majurity Trust is doing a really good job at. And that also then means that the kind of issues that we address aren't necessarily traditional ones. We've talked about it for people suffering from mental health. That there's no demographic associated with that. That's a universal challenge, regardless of wealth status.
Yeah. Dementia, for example.
Yep.
Doesn't care whether you are rich or you're poor.
So there are common themes that we work with around mental health,
Yep.
around social mobility, and there are certain specific issues, migrant domestic worker challenges, and so on. Right. So there's a range of thematics that I understand the Majority Trust distributes money against, based on key issues that it identifies, here in the Singapore context. Talk about the different type of work that we're doing then. So there's different models of engagement, as you say, some, from field building to insights and research to place-based giving. Maybe talk to me about some of those different models that the Majority Trust deploys.
I'm not sure if I'll call that different models.
Yep.
I'll probably just work on the basis that a way to bring people together, it requires us to build what I would term as a thriving ecosystem. Because society issues are complex, right? So take a grant, for example. We are, in a traditional way, when we give a grant to a charity, we're giving for the programs and the work that they are doing. And if we give to a youth mental health space, we want to see youth mental health outcomes. And we look at the programs, how successful the program is, how many people have gone through. And then if we go deeper, we'll look at social outcomes, which is great, right? So a lot of funders do that. But what sometimes funders do miss is that in order for the program to work, it requires people, it requires thought, it requires an investment into the technology platform, the admin, the logistics. I mean, we are sitting in this place just recording this podcast. We have camera people, we have like 4 or 5 cameras, we have lights. So watching a podcast doesn't mean, and replicating a podcast doesn't mean that we just buy a podcast or we just donate to a podcast. You got to sort of work out, right, all the things necessary that's needed. So when we think about philanthropy, we think from an ecosystem point of view, like how do we help charities become the best versions of themselves? How do we use data to inform our thinking about the issues? How do we use data to inform their work? How do we use capacity building to grow them, to nurture them? How do we bring mentors to help them? How do we unlock philanthropic capital for them to be able to deploy to the ground? How do we tell their story better? How do we help them at least maybe design a more professional looking logo so that when other funders look at them and say, okay, these guys are serious and they're not, a school project. So when we think about how do we help charities to become the best versions of themselves, then surely the work that we do on a funder's point of view cannot be just writing a check. We have to think of the ecosystem and how we play in the ecosystem in a way that's meaningful, engaged, and one that can cut across the various aspects of it. Right? So when we think about our field building work, where we go deeper into a cause, and that's because we are interested in like youth mental health, for example. We're interested in the ecosystem within youth mental health, who's doing what, the intentionality behind it, the collaborative nature behind it. But the organizations who are running this program needs to be developed. So we have a venture fund that looks at capacity, that looks at the new charity startups. What are the needs that they need to grow them to be a place where they can scale? And then when we look at the people they're serving, we realize that everybody is in communities. What if we can take that into a community approach and build the residents to become agents of change themselves? So from helping charities as a venture, to helping charities go deeper into a subject matter, into a cause, to helping community thrive. And then we built Foundry as a place, as a physical manifestation of that. And not forgetting that in order for all this to happen, we need the financial resources from donors to be unlocked and unleashed. So we had an advisory business to be able to work with donors to strategically deploy their resources in very, very meaningful way. So everything comes together on the basis that in order for us to solve a problem, it cannot be a single direction approach. It has to be based on an ecosystem. And if that is true, if our theory of change in investing in a stronger ecosystem that will lead to stronger leaders and leading the thriving beneficiaries, then surely the organizations that we run have to be an ecosystem in itself, one that reinforces each other. then I think we can do some good
Yeah.
in the sector.
And you mentioned the Foundry, I mean, which is where we're recording this episode today. It's a physical manifestation of everything you've just described. How did it come about? Did you just think it up one time? Did you take a reference point from another organisation? How did the idea come about of creating this space?
I think it's a what's that book? A series of unfortunate events. No,
Yeah.
Lemon Skinnicks, something like that. So the idea of Foundry was really a product of how we have been working with the sector in thinking about what collaboration actually looks like. So we stumbled we're 8 years now, right? So as we were building this and we started working with charities, we stumbled into one very interesting fact, that charities are great in collaborating with each other if they're no longer competing for funds. How we knew that was every fund that we have, we have 12 philanthropic funds currently, but every fund that we have, we organize town halls for all our grantee partners within the fund. And we realized that because they are part of the town hall, because they've all received funds from us, and they're there no longer competing for funds because they have already received grants from us, they were really wonderful in sharing, I got the supplier, I'm bringing a shipment in, why don't I share that with you, why don't you write my order, and so on and so forth. So collaboration can work if everyone are there at the same level playing field, so to speak. So we then said that, hey, if this works, what if we came together in a location where we can all work together? I think COVID was a big determinant, in fact, in that the idea of work changed. The idea of remote working during circuit breaker with Zoom and all this. So I think the concept of offices evolved. So we realized that, hey, a lot of our charities have been taking our grants to pay commercial rent because they're smaller. They don't have IPC, so therefore they can't get subsidized rent. So I said, if we are raising all this money, we're giving to all these charities, they end up pay. There has to be a better way of optimizing resources. So what we did a couple of years ago was to say that we took an opportunity because we moved from one office, a smaller office, to a slightly larger office for the same amount of rent that we were paying. So most of the time we said, you know what, let's save the cost so that we can. So I told the board, I said, instead of saving the cost, why don't we test what we have always wanted to do, which is a co-working space. So we took a slightly bigger space for the same amount of cost, and we sort of made it available. So 3 charities took it up. They came and took space in our office. They became part of the office, and the 3 of them are still here at Foundry now after all these years. And we saw the dynamics. I just wanted a pilot, can it work? Will they work together? How is the conversation like? So at one point, which sort of tell me, I think this can work, is when I found out that the 3 of them have a WhatsApp group without me. So they had a WhatsApp group among the 2 themselves. They organized pizza parties, but it didn't include their landlord. Now it's wonderful, right? And they've become very good friends. And one of the most important things that they had is that they didn't feel too alone. They had people they can work with, they can talk to. They had my team. They want to run a golf tournament, or the board asked them to run a golf tournament. They just went to one of our colleagues and say, hey, you guys run golf tournament, what do I do? And so on. So we knew it could work. There was enough proof points for us to say, you know what, this can. So we started talking to folks, and we started having a conversation with SLA, Singapore Land Authority, which basically govern a lot of the state properties. And then 11 Prinsep, which is the former elections department, became available. It wasn't a long drawn conversation. It was not an easy conversation, but it was a very productive conversation. And the government saw what we were trying to do. And yeah, here we are.
Now we're here.
Almost a year.
I was going to say, almost a year in. There's how many charities are based here now?
About 30.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, we started with 14 in November of last year when we opened. Now we've got 30 charities. Yeah.
Fantastic. With space, office space that's available. This is a big kind of meeting space. We've got education rooms. There's, like you say, co-working space, hot desks, dedicated offices.
So we call it the home base of collective impact.
Yeah,
and there's a common theme around it. So it's a social impact hub where it allows charities, funders, social enterprises to have a home. There's an event place called the Refinery that sits up to 150. We have Anvil, a training room that sits up to 40. We're about to renovate one of the rooms to become a training room that sits up to 20. So there's multiple types of spaces. There's a dining room that becomes a boardroom. We have a cafe that's run by a social enterprise called Better. It's a cafe by day, bar by night. There is a mental health clinic. There's run by Intellect. There's a podcast studio for audio podcasts. So it has, I think, everything a social impact person needs. So whenever I think about social impact, all of us need largely 4 things. We need money, we need a space, we need coffee, and we need alcohol. So those are the 4 things you can find at Foundry.
Tick all those particular boxes.
Absolutely.
Very, very good. Excellent. I love it here. You're just walking through the door, the vibe, the energy of the place, and to see the collaboration happening every day between different organisations is great. So, okay, let's kind of flip back, because we talked about Majurity Trust being very much grounded in a Singapore context, even in terms of the name. And we've been involved in conversations now on a number of occasions where I think the Leadership Council, it came up in a recent board retreat. Okay, we're doing so well in Singapore, and Singapore is in a very strong place relative perhaps to its neighbours, right? Whether it's got a great reputation, I was about to say great brand, a great reputation for good governance, fiscal responsibility, excellent nation building over 60 years. It's just turned its 60th birthday. And there's an argument that says regional security is important, that actually for Singapore to maintain its strength, we also need our partners and our regional allies to be strong as well. So why shouldn't the Majurity Trust go into other countries and replicate the model? The conversation's been had. I'm keen to hear your perspective on that and how those conversations played out.
Well, I would start by saying that I agree fully with you. A stronger ASEAN, a stronger region is better for everyone.
Yep.
Right. I would take probably one step back from that and say that the region often is far better in social impact than we are. So there's very little that Singapore can offer to the region to say, wow, this is the way to do social impact. My friends in Thailand, my friends in Malaysia, in Indonesia are doing are doing really good work in their respective countries. So it's not a frame of mind that we think what we have will be better for the countries that they're in. Sometimes in Singapore we tend to think like that what we have is great. I think governance, I think we're pretty strong. The way we look at systems, I think those are great. I think we can share that. But there are far more innovative things that's happening even in Myanmar than here in Singapore. So I don't think there is a need for us to go and save the world, save the region, or to export what we have as a benefit to the system. What I think is unique and I think useful is the appreciation for local context and the empowerment of local people. So when Majurity Trust focus entirely in Singapore, I think what it has for us is created a model that can be replicated in other countries, but not on the basis that we in Singapore know better. I'm really clear in my mind that we should never ever from Singapore go to another ASEAN country, go to another country and say, hey, this is the way to do it. I just think it's
outdated thinking. That's not helpful.
I just think that every country have really good people who, if funded by local philanthropists, can really bring about an amount of change that in the philanthropy space that perhaps we have seen in Singapore.
Yeah.
All we need are people who believe in it, believe in the power collective, believe in the ability to work together. What we need are donors who are prepared to put aside their self-interest, their ego, their name, to come together and say, together we can do more. Yeah. But in their cultural context.
Yeah.
Right? So when I think about growing Majurity outside of Singapore, I don't think about building Majurity Trust as an international organization, but rather, how can I actually go deeper in what I do in Singapore and build it into a model that can be replicated in other countries, right? The idea, the DNA, the thinking behind it, the ability to work with donors at a collective level, the power dynamics between donors and grantee partners, how we journey with them, the effort in which the team takes to understand the challenges the charities are facing on the ground, and then think backwards how we can support that, the capacity building, a place like Foundry where they can all come together, for example. Now, all those can be replicated.
Yep.
It's not rocket science, it's just a lot of hard work, but that can be replicated in Jakarta, in Bangkok, in Manila, that is funded by local philanthropists, run by a local team, supporting local projects. They don't even need to be called Majurity Trust.
No.
Because the name doesn't make sense in Manila.
Yeah, of course.
The name doesn't make sense in Thailand. So I think if we can think of expanding the work and the influence and the kind of thing that we're doing, I think we need to build the base on a fundamental belief that we don't have all the answers. Our regional partners are often in a far better place and far further place than we are. So we're not there to really say, wow, we're here to save the day. If we can build on the premise that what we have is a model that can potentially be replicated, that is hyper-local in nature, that takes into consideration cultural context and cultural empowerment. Now, I think there is a place for that. I think that the ability to scale that will be far better and far more efficient and effective, and it will go further than me trying to build Majurity Trust into an international organization and me trying to go and hire someone there and then build. I think it stems from that fundamental belief that local folks are in a far better place. All they need is just a group of people with the resources to back them.
I agree. And it reminds me of the conversation we had. We were both in Oxford recently. We were taking on a tour of the Botanic Gardens. There was a great conversation about biomimicry and organisational design. And there was talk about mycelium, and then there was talk about how forests behave and how each tree is independent, but the roots communicate with each other in some way. And so perhaps that's part of it. We can share our knowledge and IP. We stand alone, but we can support and enable others, even as they stand alone in their own biodiverse context. And I think that's exactly how you described it. I think there's parallels there that we could
learn
agree.
From. It's like a mycelium network. I like that. And what can the future look like using that as a frame? It may not be a single ownership model, but it can be an alliance model of very like-minded, and one of our founding board members used the word a like-hearted alliance of people who believe in a common ideology. Now that will be powerful. I imagine if a donor who comes in and say, hey, I want to do regional work in the elderly, for example, I now have a network and alliance of people who think like us, who believe in the way of empowerment, who look at smaller charities on the ground that large international funders typically don't see. But we can help them grow. So it's, I think, quite powerful if we can get that happening.
I think it's a nice idea. It speaks also to one of we've talked about some of the superpowers that the Majurity Trust has in its favour. And one of those that I think about often is our convening role, our role as conveners. And what we're talking about there is potentially an ability for us to serve a convening role in a regional context. But we also play a role today as a convener within a Singapore context. I'm often fascinated. You've spoken about it, right? We bring donors together, like-minded, like-hearted donors together. We bring grantee partners together. We're also able to bring other stakeholders, including government. And we're able to hold a space for a conversation to occur that may not be possible for a reasonably conservative government to participate in under other circumstances. It seems to have been by design that you've created this convening force of the Majurity Trust. How's that come about? How does that serve the Majurity Trust well?
I honestly don't think that when we first started, we have a strategy paper and we wrote like, this is what we can and cannot do. I think we learn over time that there is power, or there is the ability for us to bring people together. I can't say that 8 years ago when we started, we sort of said that that is what we will do, right? I think over time, in the work that we do, in the conversation that we have, in the meetings that we go into, we sort of build sufficient relationship with enough people across the sector, both in government as well as the grantee partners and donors, that maybe they like us enough to say that, hey, if we are bringing people together, they don't mind being part of the conversation. I'm just very careful to say, oh, wow, we have built this platform.
Hubristic, isn't it? Otherwise, we want to be careful about that.
You see, everyone can have a platform. Anyone can design a platform. Why would people want to come together? It's nothing but relationship and trust. So do I have the government's back? Do I have my charities back? Do I have my donors back? Do we have a safe space where we can talk about very difficult conversations? Having the trust that we're not there to lobby, we're not there to advocate, we're not there to say what you must or must not do. A lot of times when we bring people together and we bring friends together, it's really have an honest conversation that we don't have all the answers. Neither are we a platform that we go to government and tell them they are right or they're wrong. But if we have enough trust with each other and if we have enough relationship with each other, then there is a possibility for us to have very honest conversation. So I wouldn't say that at Majurity we have sort of been from day one designed, this is what we are. I think we've learned along the way. I think we've seen some fruits. I think we've had the fortune of building really good friendships with different people across the sector that people don't mind coming together. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a very good thing.
There's a certain level of trust that we have each other's back.
And it's enabling the Majurity Trust to experiment a little bit as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We're talking about, we've been talking recently about unlocking different forms of philanthropic capital. Yeah. And the recent trip to the UK, we explored a lot about the UK policy of the dormant account funds, fantastic innovation, part of government there. We talked about impact investing and social financing, and these are things that we're beginning to explore, and we've almost earned that right to hold that space. Say, well, what might that look like in a Singapore context? And create space for that conversation without, again, we're not saying we're providing the answer, here it is. It's precipitate the conversation and figure out how we can serve as a useful outsider to enable that, if that's what people want to do.
Yeah.
But it is something that seems to be emerging. Impact investing does seem to be rising to the surface and a topic of conversation here in Singapore at the moment. Maybe just explain briefly what impact investing is and how you see it playing out in our context.
Yeah, so I think the starting point is, I think philanthropy as a whole, philanthropists as a community are evolving. I think they are a lot more progressive, they travel a lot, they've been seeing very good ideas in making money and or capital really impactful in multiplying ways. Right? So instead of just traditional grants, are there ways to deploy capital in far more optimized ways, far more effective ways? And if we take a leaf from the commercial capital markets, we know for a fact that money can go further if you invest rightly, right? So using the same principles into the charity space, then we have the ability to say, hey, if we apply the principles, but instead of financial returns, but we look at impact returns, what would that look like? For the last 20, 25 years, people have been experimenting with it, and we've seen a variety of successes, and we've also seen a variety of failures. One of the conversations when we were in the UK was one of them saying to us, Martin, we're really glad that you're trying to start this from scratch.
Yeah. Because
we use the term social finance instead of impact investing. We see social finance as a whole category. He said that sometimes the regret that friends sometimes in the UK have is that social finance has become more finance than social.
Yeah, okay.
Where donors now look at returns more than what kind of impact they're getting. So for us, when we think about the learnings from our friends, and we say that how can we build different types of instruments that our donors have the ability to participate in, whether it's a concessionary loan, match trading, recyclable grants, it's basically optimizing philanthropic capital in a way that allows us to multiply impact, right? So it's not rocket science, but the underlying foundation of it is how do we use resources how do we unlock resources in the most effective and catalytic way? The goal isn't about not doing philanthropic grants, because there are many things that has no enterprise solution that requires pure philanthropy. So we need to continue to invest in that, and that's still my biggest pot within the Majurity Trust in terms of giving. But as donors mature, as donors are more progressive in their thinking, they are looking for different instruments to use their philanthropic capital differently, then we create a much wider spectrum of giving opportunities. So we started recyclable grants with Maybank, and that's going really quite well. It was an investment over 3 years of 4 million. Wow. That fund starting in 2021 will now last 2030 because of a recyclable component to it. We're now investing in a little bit in the social enterprises with Temasek Holdings called T-Ignite, which is an impact first fund, where from Temasek's point of view, they would have normally just write a philanthropic grant and they'll run down the $1 or $2 million in the pot. But if we build in an impact and we say that, hey, we just want you to return the capital because it gives you the cash flow to be able to build your social enterprise. But if you achieve X amount of impact, an agreed upon impact, and you have multiples of that, or you do it faster than you said you would, then we'll give a hairline discount and maybe you return only 80 cents on every dollar that we have given to you. The other 20 cents is given to you as a philanthropic grant, as an incentive for impact.
Even the one, I think was one of the organisations we came across in the UK where they said, well, we'll give you the money based on additional diverse revenue streams
That's
that you
right.
build.
It's called match trading.
Yeah, so you're diversifying your revenue stream, so it's actually good for the social impact organisation.
Yep.
So it's long-term sustainability. You're rewarding the right behaviour.
Absolutely.
I thought that was quite a good example of innovation.
Yeah.
Right?
So at the core of it, it's important for us, and I remind our team, I remind myself this. Our goal as a philanthropy organisation isn't to be the most innovative, and we are sold to try new models, right? We can get caught up in, invest, because it sound cool, right? We are investing in the model. What at the essence of what we are trying to go, we are going for impact. That's it. It doesn't really matter what model we use. We just got to find the right model for the right time and that right issue. Sometimes it can be philanthropic capital. Sometimes it can be match trading. Sometimes it can be a concessionary loan, for example. The danger sometimes I find is that intellectually we are so caught up with the innovation and the model that we forget that the reason why we're doing it. Why we're doing it isn't just about having returns. Why we're doing it is because we want to find the best way to get resources to the right people who can actually build impact. So we back in the unit, before Majurity Trust, I ran an institute called the Institute for Societal Leadership at SMU. So I teach a program on social innovation. And I have an innovation quadrant that talks about old problems, old solutions, old problem, new solutions, new problems, old solutions, and new problems, new solutions, right? Just a simple 2 by 2.
Yep.
And my point to students have always been this. Sometimes the most innovative idea is an old one applied to a new problem. But if we teach social innovation on the basis that it must be innovative, nobody would ever try old solutions on new problems.
We risk losing old knowledge that's well established. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So a great example is roundabouts. Roundabout is one of the most efficient traffic tool.
Yeah.
We don't need solar lamp. There are places that need that. But in a farm, in a rural place, a roundabout is one of the best innovation that we should apply. So I guess the way, the essence is, for us at Majurity, and I can't speak for everyone else, right? Just for us at Majurity, we just got to be very razor clear, why do we do what we do?
Yeah.
And if we stay on this track, if our minds are clear that at the end of the day, we want to help donors realize their impact in their giving. If we want our charities to be the best versions of themselves, then our goal is to create a system that best suits that on an individualized basis as well as an ecosystem basis. Not every innovation will suit everyone.
Yes.
So it does not mean that the model doesn't work.
Yes.
It just doesn't work in that instance. And because I don't need Majurity Trust to be known as the most innovative funder, I want Majurity Trust to be the most relatable funder, the most effective funder, then I think we're on the right track.
And of course, if I think about Majurity Trust, now kind of maybe pivoting away from the organisation, perhaps now towards your leadership. Right? I didn't know that about you, that you were a teacher once, by the way. That was quite interesting. You've overseen a period of, you say we're just coming up to our 8th anniversary, overseen a period of tremendous growth. In fact, in the last couple of years, we've doubled in size, right? And almost doubled again. Over 40 people now. But let's grow with the scale and the size of the challenges that we feel comfortable to take on, and as a result of building the Foundry and all those good things. Moving from an organisation that's 5 or 10 people to an organisation of 40, that requires different things of you as CEO, as a leader.
Drives me nuts.
So how has your role changed? How are you changing or adapting as a leader to suit the different needs of Majurity Trust?
Well, I have more white hair.
Join the club.
I have a bigger tummy. I drink more.
Yeah.
I think it's just part of leadership is evolution, right? It's about growing. I like a great book by not Malcolm Gladwell, no, Marshall Goldsmith. So Marshall is one of the top executive coach in the world. He coaches the Fortune top 50 companies. And he has a book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I absolutely love the book. The problem sometimes leaders face is that they became successful doing things in a certain way, and then when they go into a different environment, a different season, they use back what they are used to, and they try to apply it and then get very, very different results.
Yeah.
And that's Marshall's basically point. In all the coaching he has done, is a lot of leaders fail when they don't realize they're in a different reality.
Yeah.
I guess for me personally, that's where I am at the moment. I love having really smart people. I love having people who are much better than what I do. So, and I'm fortunate that in Majurity we have that.
We really do. It
We
is
really
an incredible
have.
team.
Yeah. So I've just been very fortunate that I can count on people who have a good heart, have a good mind, are willing to try. So a large part of the evolution for me is because I'm not the smartest person in the room. My job is just to open space for people to try. That drives me nuts sometimes because I know exactly how I want things to be done. But it doesn't work with smart people.
Yeah.
And I am willing to be wrong. And sometimes I am wrong. Most times I'm right. But sometimes I am wrong. I guess a big change like a classic example, I'm not a systems person. I'm not a performance appraisal person. I'm not a development chat person. It drives me nuts. My basic point is there's nothing I will say to you in a structured environment that I will not say to you when I'm having coffee with you. It's just who I am as a leader. I'm highly relational. So when I have a one-on-one, just having coffee with people is far better than me sitting down and writing down the point just so that we can document that. But
It might not be what
as
the other
we grow,
person needs, right? Yeah.
as we grow, I realize that there are systems that I need to follow. I can no longer do anything I want, which again drives me nuts. What's the point of being a boss? But system and processes are important.
Yeah.
So
That's
I think a
restraint.
large part. Yeah. So I think a large part of my growth journey is to learn what it means to build some level of bureaucracy that is enough to be able to make sure that the organization is in a good place, but not too much is holding us back. And it's a fine balance.
Yeah, it's tough. That's not an ezy balance. No. And as we continue to grow, and long may we continue to grow and scale and do good work, then we'll figure that stuff out together.
Yeah.
I would just echo again. I double click on what you said. The strength of the team here, I think, is something that's quite incredible at the Majurity Trust. I observed that when we were in the UK, meeting a bunch of much large organisations, and we held our own.
Yeah.
And
very proud of them.
Yeah, really, really great job. And I'll maybe finish one story. It's quite funny. Maybe it's a uniquely Singaporean thing, but it made me very proud to be part of the Majurity Trust. Every meeting we had, at the end of the meeting, we were filing out. Always 2 or 3 people from the Majurity Trust stayed behind, tidied the room, cleared everything away, put everything back where it was, and just left it as it should. Now maybe it's because in the hawker centres here you get fined if you don't take your tray back.
I hope it's more than that.
I think it's more. I think it's more than that. But it comes to the essence of the Majurity. The people that care, people that kind of show that heart each and every day, and the small acts. I think.
If there's anything that drives leadership and drives organization well, I think it's just a sense of gratitude, right?
Yeah.
I think you have rightly pointed out, we're not a big organization, we are not an international organization, we are still growing, there's still plenty of headroom for us to develop. But we've had really good partners. Some of these guys are global people. And for us, we are just thankful that they are generous with us, we're just grateful for their friendship, we're just grateful for their partnership. Many of them are donors, but at the same time, they treat us equals, we have good conversations, we learn from each other. And I think that essence of gratefulness, that essence of gratitude, then transpires into the way we work with them, in the way that we're thankful for them to let us use the boardroom. The least we can do is to keep it clean and tidy. That's the least we could do, right? So I think the essence of gratitude would drive a lot of how we think. The Majurity Trust works on the goodwill of people across board. Without the generosity of our donors, we can't do what we do.
Yeah.
Without the hard work that our grantee partners are putting in, without them trusting us that we're not taking them for a ride, we actually genuinely care for them, without the staff who are, I think, putting aside their careers, many of them can go anywhere. I think we are just grateful as an organization that we have good people like yourself who will volunteer with us, right? And if we can keep that, just always remember, there is no single thing within the Majurity Trust is at the result of any single individual. It's just, we're just in a fortunate place that people are willing to come together and if we constantly have that gratitude that runs through the other organization, then I think we'll be okay. And it will come out and it will manifest in different ways, in the way we treat grantee partners with respect, in the way that we treat our donors with a certain level of gratitude, but holding our space to tell them we should think differently, right? So we're not subservient as an organization. We tell donors no all the time. So there is an equal partnership, an equal footing, an equal a mutual respect that we have across board. I think that's a very powerful combination, and I'm just thankful that we have that.
Yeah, me too. And look, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to contribute to the Majurity Trust in some way, shape or form, and I'm also grateful for your time here today. It's been a fascinating conversation. Martin, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.